This is Rich Straffolino with the Department of No. Rob Dunwood, host of Daily Tech News Show. Got to ask, what's been your priority this week? What's been on your mind?
So, Rich, I just came off vacation. I was on a 10-day vacation that I got off a Sunday. So it literally was just catching up. I feel like I have done, in fact, I have done. This is the 15th podcast this week. So just catching up.
You're paying all your podcast dues.
So I have averaged 3 shows a day every day this week.
Well, I'm glad. Hopefully we can cap off all your podcast debt for the week. I'm super happy and thrilled to have you here. Can't wait to get into the news. But first, we got to ask David Cross, the CISO of Atlassian, what has been your priority this week?
Well, I was at the Gartner Security and Risk Summit here in National Harbor, Maryland. So I'm still digesting that, right? And that's why I was only able to do one podcast this week, unlike you, Rob. So I got a lot of catching up to do.
Swimming in quadrants and all sorts of stuff. I cannot wait to get both of your insight for the show. But first, before we do that, producer Josh, we got to run that opening. Let's go.
From the CISO series, it's Department of No.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Department of No, your virtual Friday strategy meeting. A huge thanks to our sponsor for today, Vanta, for helping make the show possible. We'll talk more about them in just a little bit. Remember to get involved in our YouTube chat live. We broadcast every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening to us later, if you're watching live now, you already know that. So I don't know why I'm explaining that to you. Either way, you can also email us feedback@cisoseries.com. We do, in fact, read all of them. We do share them with AI agents, right? We ask them, is this a cool email? But humans do, in fact, read all of them. Just kidding. Never share any of your emails ever. Just a quick reminder that all the opinions expressed by our guests are, in fact, their own opinions, not necessarily those of their employers, nonprofits they're associated with, friends, family, frenemies, enemies, nemesis, anything like that. Just theirs. We've got about 30 minutes, so let's get into the news. Got to start off with our No or No segment. This is where we have so much news in the week. We can't go into deep dive discussions on it all, but I still want some takes on it. First up here, we got to talk about OAuth tokens vulnerable on github.dev. Now, this is security researcher Amar Askar released details on a vulnerability that allows threat actors to install malicious VS Code extensions that can steal GitHub OAuth tokens when using the github.dev web-based source code editor. This is possible because the web editor does not scope tokens to a particular repository you're interacting with. Basically, you got one token, you got access to every repository that they have access to. Threat actors can exploit a message passing mechanism between VS Code windows and web views using malicious JavaScript to extract the OAuth token. That's kind of the back end behind there. Microsoft was notified of the vulnerability on June 2nd, precisely 1 hour before Askar released a proof of concept on the exploit. He cited previous bad experiences with Microsoft's Security Response Center for the comically short notice. David, I want to start with you here. What's more notable for you? Another security researcher thumbing their nose at Microsoft's disclosure policies. We saw this last week with, Epic Eclipse, Thunderous Eclipse, something Eclipse was the researcher for that. Or is it the exploit itself? What's your thoughts?
I honestly agree, sharing here, that I think we need to have a fresh discourse and engagement that I think we've been missing for a little while here. And in my personal opinion, I think we have to have good dialogue and engagement. And I think that if we do not have that, we're going to run into much more flack and conflict that is not in our common interest.
Rob, I'm curious for you. Has this crossed over? Have you been following in kind of like on Daily Tech News Show? Has this kind of crossed over some of this drama with security researchers and having some trouble with Microsoft recently?
So yeah, I think that this particular story here, we might have covered it earlier in the week, but it is interesting. They were given an hour of notice. There's someone to actually respond to the email in an hour would be good. But to get an hour of notice before, you put your proof of concept up, that's not how it always used to work. Researchers used to give organizations a bit of time to get the fix. That's not all on the researchers. That's a lot on organizations like Microsoft that kind of thumb their nose at it. So, here we are.
And David, I think to your point, yeah, re-engaging with that conversation, right? Like, where is the breakdown of do these people that are, again, not doing this necessarily for a bug bounty, doing this, because they're they're passionate about this. These are or their products they're using, right? And obviously they want them to be as secure as possible. Figuring out, okay, is a 30-day window no longer feasible? Is it the problem of too much volume because we're getting all these AI vulnerability scanners? Microsoft's having a hard time sorting out false positives, that kind of stuff. So I definitely think, as with a lot of things that we are seeing, kind of in the certainly in the open source world, a lot of things under stress all at once. And yeah, I love that idea of Microsoft maybe, hey, you're one of the 700-pound gorillas in the security landscape here. You have some weight to throw around here to maybe fix this. So I hope it gets better.
Rich, I really can't resist bringing out that maybe as a community, maybe this is time for a new summit with all the various people coming together saying, hey, we've got the new world of Mythos and the wave of vulns coming in. Disclosure, patching is all going to change a little bit. Maybe we need to think differently about this going forward.
I am 100%. When that summit happens, I will be there virtually or physically. David Spark, come on, pay for my ticket for the summit that we're creating right now. I want to be there to cover it because I think we definitely need it for sure. Something else. Rob, jump in.
I just want to say, Dave, that's a great that's a great idea. Somebody should really take you up on that. Whoever's listening.
What we need is children. Can we all get in a room? We all want to do better here. Can we just agree to some basic principles here, so we don't so the dumpster fire doesn't spread to a house fire, or et cetera, metaphor. Next up here, the cost of the U.S. cyber force here, something that popped up on our radar this week. According to a new report from the Commission on U.S. Cyber Force Generation as part of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, deep breath, I don't want to know what that acronym is. The cost of starting up a U.S. cyber force is estimated to be around $11 billion. The report estimates that starting a force up would take between 12 to 18 months and require at least 11,000 in staff across civilian and military agencies. The Government Accountability Office last year reported that roughly 61,000 people are currently involved in cyberspace operations across the Department of Defense. This presumably a cyber force would then alleviate a lot of things that are going on in individual parts of the Pentagon, and a 2027 proposed budget of $7.7 billion. In related news, this is just for some extra context here, Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen said Wednesday that he's seeking to revitalize the agency, although he's estimating that CISA probably needs around 2,800 employees. Right now, their budget is sitting around $3 billion, is facing a $700 million slash. So just kind of putting that $11 billion figure in context here. Rob, for you, are you, as we continue to see a shakeup in the administration's approach to national cybersecurity, is any of that filtering down to more of a corporate level, to a consumer level, or is this all above our pay grade and this is going to be pretty opaque to us no matter what happens?
Yeah, I don't know that consumers, which is the side that I cover most, are particularly paying attention to this. I am just reminded that we just casually threw the number $11 billion out there, which is a humongous number. $11 billion, 11,000 people for this. But the thing is that in the world of AI, we're talking about potentially $4 trillion worth of AI IPOs within the next year. So $11 million is a lot. And clearly all of that's not going to go to just payroll. But that would be $1 million per person if they were to actually hire 11,000 folks for it. So it is a whopping number. It's a huge number for cybersecurity.
Yeah. Well, Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
You're right. Like Shelby McIntyre in the chat says, hey, they were at Gartner as well. So at Gartner, we just saw the world, the tokenopolis, right? The cost, right? So Rob, is it really all the people that are going to cost all the money, or it's all the tokens that they're going to spend and need in those roles that's going to cost all the money? I think that's the biggest question here.
I think the answer might be B, because it's interesting. It's like, how did we get here? And this is not the story, but the thing is that we look at, well, we're going to, if we put all this AI in place, we potentially could lay some folks off. And then we figured once we laid the folks off, well, wait a minute, we laid them off, but the AI isn't there yet. Oh, wait a minute, that's because folks aren't using it. So let's tokenize it. Let's gamify it and get people to use it. And now they're using it for not doing any type of real work to get done. So now you have expensive AI and you have a deluge of people who aren't there to actually do the job. So I think it's B, and I think that's going to be we'll see this in not the coming years, in the coming months. We will see the tokenization may not have been a good thing.
I mean, we're seeing that in real time as people are posting their calculators we've gone from token maxing to tokenomics in like a week, it seems like, right, David?
Absolutely. And certainly, as we saw at the Gartner conference as well, a number of different analysts, Jeffrey Doan and others called out saying, hey, you're going to lay these people off. You're going to get to this state of plateau with your AI, and then you're going to need to hire these people back. And they may not be as cheap as you thought they were, after that 2 years expires. So companies really need to think carefully about this.
Very carefully.
All right, next up here, ChatGPT share links used to host fake outage pages to deliver malware. Cyber criminals are abusing ChatGPT's sharing feature to distribute malware through a campaign researchers call LLM Share. Weren't feeling too creative there today. Attackers create legitimate-looking ChatGPT share pages hosted on OpenAI's domain and use them to display fake service outage messages. Victims are told they can continue using ChatGPT by downloading a supposed desktop app, which, you guessed it, is actually malware. Researchers found that the campaign leveraged online advertising and users' trust in recognizable AI brands to increase success rates. David, for you, which is the bigger story here? Anthropic and OpenAI services go down all the time, so that's an effective lure, or this actual campaign here? This seems to be a new twist on a classic right here, but I'm wondering, does that, we've seen some frequent outages. It seems to have gotten a little better. Is that causing some issues here that people can exploit?
Well, actually, I can't resist, in saying that it's out the shadow AI is really becoming this new world for people to attack and the attackers to take advantage of, right? So everyone's using AI. Is my grandmother using AI? I'm not 100% sure, but I digress. But everyone's using AI. When something goes down, it's like you're going to pull something else down. I've got to still use it. I can't. It's my phenol. I can't live without it. But then the attackers and things are taking advantage of this. And this is going back to the classic element of restricting the applications and downloads on your systems, right? Because now you've got the incentive. Oh, we'll name your favorite AI tool is down. I'm going to go get another one or go something else. And that's the malware. So I think it's just like we saw with the smartphone era, right? Is like, I'm going to download a new app, right? And until they all got the Play Store and iTunes Store or the Apple Store is starting having those restrictions. And I think that's the world of shadow AI now. And that's what caused my interest the most here.
Yeah, Rob, for you, I mean, is this, an extension of, I think, kind of BYOD, cloud computing, now LLMs, anytime we're kind of in this liminal transitory space here, does that just provide all sorts of opportunities for mayhem?
It absolutely does, because we are in the realm of where employee provisioned devices are everywhere, whether it be a phone, a tablet, your home computer, your laptop. Organizations have for the last several decades have allowed people to, hey, you want to use your own computer? That's probably more productivity for us. We'll let you hook it up. And now, Dave, I'm wondering what folks who do what you do are thinking about that. Do we need to have different plans in place for people bringing in their own PCs, their own phones, their own tablets to use in the workplace? Because if you get the malware there, where those devices aren't necessarily as controlled as the corporate device, that could be a big problem.
I think we have to have, whether it's the BYODs or other devices, we have to have the MDM, right? We have to have the mobile device management and things like that, or otherwise we're going to get attacked and take advantage of, especially in this world of AI, like never before.
All right, speaking of getting attacked here, our next story, HTTP 2 bomb shows the wild world of AI vulnerability scanning. Security researchers at Calif discovered a denial of service technique dubbed HTTP 2 bomb using OpenAI's Codex. The attack impacts, theoretically, up to 880,000 sites that use HTTP 2 and exploits a chain of 3 old 2016 vulnerabilities to launch compression layer attacks and amplify rates. We've seen classic bomb attacks before like this. This one's a little novel in that it uses near empty headers, and this exhausts the machine's memory due to per entry bookkeeping on the back end there. But we got some big names impacted: Nginx, Apache HTTPD, Microsoft IIS, Envoy, Cloudflare, Pingora, all vulnerable. Nginx and Apache have released patches there, but still a lot of big names in there. Rob, I'm curious, we're increasingly going to see Codex Mythos choose your model of the day here, finding novel chains of old vulnerabilities or just unthinkable combinations of vulnerabilities for a while here. Do you want to know more about these, or is it enough to know that everybody's kind of dealing with this all at once and we just kind of have to, we're going to be in this messy middle here for a while?
I'm thinking back to my corporate days. I would want to know if there's a vulnerability. I want to know it. That's one of the biggest things that when I was in corporate, one of the biggest issues that we had was just not knowing what we didn't know. So I personally want to know. The problem becomes is, do we have the resources to go correct everything? Because it looks like Mythos is finding things at the speed of light.
Yeah, it's that the idea that suddenly there are a huge amount of known unknowns that we now need to account for in a weird way, right? Where before it was like, okay, patch was released, we updated it's now dead and done. All of a sudden, it's like we have like zombie vulnerabilities tag teaming to cause mayhem. David, I'm curious, like, what has your experience been with this kind of stuff?
Well, really, I think the big change is really about the chaining right here. Whether name your favorite model and the chaining, we still can find the vulnerabilities, but how they're being chained together, which is really new. It's really the innovation, in a bad way. And so what's happening with the chaining is it's making the blast radius much, much larger than ever before. So therefore, hey, we got a bunch of mediums, but they fully can't get in with that. Well, you chain them together. Yes, they got in, and now you have the blast radius. So a lot of people is that you're still going to have the challenges of the patching and those type of things. But then, well, what can you do to harden and reduce that blast radius? Because the chaining start occurring more and more as we see Mythos is being expanded to many more companies, which means it's going to be expanded to many more attackers.
Is this though like a 2-year problem and then things get better, right? Like where the reason this is all like we haven't had this ability to kind of have this infinite combinatorics of bugs all getting thrown together in a blender by LLMs and finding weird combinations, right? Like at a certain point, like we'll have scanned the stuff, and then as new stuff rolls out, we'll know that this is a possibility, and we roll this into how we're looking at our blast radius, like going forward. Like I feel like this is where it's going to be really bad for like a couple of years as we slowly get general release of all these models, and then I don't know if it gets better, but it gets at least back to something a little bit more stable. Or am I being a Pollyanna here?
I think the way I think about it is that we're going to have a blast, we're going to have a wave, but I think we're going to get to a level of maturity across the industry. And the many companies and organizations, I think, is that you're then saying, hey, I'm going to shift left into my coding agent. And Atlassian, what we say is we're shifting left to our AI agents that are doing the security scanning, remediation, things like that, before it even goes down the pipeline, right? And as companies take that level of maturity, we should not be seeing the same level of things that we've seen for the last 30 years.
I want to know from our audience. This is like the question I have for our audience this week. Where do you see these kind of models, their ability to chain? Is this new normal of terrible? Is it get better in a couple of years? Is there the possibility to shift left? Do things eventually get better as we're able to hand off more things? I'm curious. Feedback at CISOseries.com. I want to know. I also want to know that you've heard the ad that I'm about to read for our wonderful sponsor for today, and that is for Vanta. Your team just added its 67th AI tool, and unfortunately, also your 67th security blind spot. The good news, the Vanta agent works like a GRC engineer in the background, finding every app your team uses, scoring the risk, and drafting fixes for you. Vanta is the platform used by over 16,000 fast-moving companies like Ramp, Cursor, and Harvey, who are shaping the future with AI and staying ahead of AI risk. Get started at vanta.com/headlines. All right, let's get into one of the big stories of the week here. Federal audit reveals NIST NVD problems. A report released on Thursday from the Department of Commerce found that NIST has mismanaged a critical cybersecurity vulnerability database through poor planning, inefficient operations, duplicate federal programs, and failure to communicate with users. There has been all sorts of drama with NIST for years now at this point, having a back catalog, not being able to clear it, having budget issues that are only exacerbated existing issues here. NIST leaders admitted they had no long-term plan for clearing a backlog, even as it grew from 13,000 in 2024 to 27,000 unprocessed security flaws by the end of 2025. David, the audit does not paint a good picture here, finding that 80% of analyst time was spent calculating security scores and severity scores and identifying impacted products. And those scores only matched independent evaluation 12% of the time. NIST has known there's a problem here. They've talked about doing private consortiums, all this sort of stuff. For you, how critical has NIST been historically, or the NVD, been historically? And is there any path back to relevancy here, or are we just moving on?
No, I think we need to move on, right? I think the numbers that are coming out now, it just doesn't make sense anymore. But I think if you look at the industry, we've seen of all the startups and certainly Gartner, this past week is, all the various companies that are actually looking, hey, actually look at the prioritization, right? Based on the context of your environment, right? Even lastly, we think about the context of our environment, right? And what's the risk profile? So we actually know, like we can go back to many years ago, Spectre meltdown, right? Oh my gosh, it's the CVE score of 10. Right, but no, there are no guest VMs. There is no customer code running there. It's not applicable. But then it changed the score. So here we have to think about differently and having these algorithms. And this is where some of the great startups are helping the industry and helping many organizations to deal with this in a much better way.
Yeah, and Shelby McIntyre in our chat here says, I think remediation is a bigger bottleneck than triaging currently. I would definitely say we've been talking about that on Defense in Depth CISO series podcast for sure. Rob, I need you to jump in here. I mean, NVD was good enough for government work, but are you kind of in the same boat here with context is king essentially at this point right now with the volume we're seeing? Like what are your thoughts on NVD going forward here?
I think that organizations outside of the federal government have kind of, I don't want to say they've looked down on it. It's kind of like, well, you know what? That's not what it needs to be. So we're going to do what we need to do. They've been running in that mode for years now. So when you look at this, I hate to blame things on the federal government, but this does look like a federal government type of issue. It's like the right hand did not know what the left hand was doing. They're both working on the same stuff, paying two groups of people to kind of get to the same work. They are working on things that the vendors have actually already remediated, and they're still trying to remediate what's already been remediated. So there's just a lot of waste that's been going on there. So, like I said, I don't like to be that person to just blame everything on the federal government, because it is the biggest entity. It is the biggest employer of people if you look at it as one thing. So there's a lot of folks that work there. So these are the kind of problems when you just have that kind of mass that you're going to have. But this, as you said when you did the initial read, it doesn't look good, because it's literally the problem here is that the right hand simply didn't know what the left hand was doing, and they were kind of working on the same stuff, and it just puts them even further behind.
Well, and it was almost, I mean, reading through it, it's almost as like the required efficiency of NVD enrichment, right, was clearly built for a scale of vulnerability finding that just is we're at a factor above that right now, and it is hard. I mean, institutional change is hard for anybody. Insert metaphor, turning battleship, whatever you have, and so being able to suddenly deal with 10x the vulnerabilities, and it's only getting worse over time. That would be a tough ask for any organization, public or private. Let alone one that's dealt with budget issues, and also, to your point, is kind of at odds with a number of things. I am curious to see if we do see a through line with some sort of public-private consortium going forward. Again, this seems like a thing some people have a lot of interest in, and again, open source. I'm going to beat the drum of 2026 is the year that every assumption we have about open source is being stress tested all at once at scales we've never conceived of before. So, I do feel like a lot of people have an interest in maybe not the NVD as it was constituted, but figuring out a way to do it in a feasible way. But maybe that's again wishful thinking on my part.
Rob, I can't resist asking you a question on something that Richie brought up earlier about, hey, it's not about the prioritization anymore. It's about the remediation. But, after Gartner, I see with things like that. Are we not moving to the world where all our scanners and other tools are actually saying, not only am I just finding it, right, but I'm prioritizing it, but I'm also fixing it for you. Like we're seeing like Backline and others are doing, is that not the world? Don't worry about the CVE score. Just tell me where it is and fix it for me. And that's the new world that we should see in this space, maybe?
I would agree. I think that's kind of where we're moving to where when you start looking at what AI is going to enable, number one, AI is enabling the finding of the issues, but number two, it's going to enable the fixing of them. So it's not going to be where I don't want to say you would never need, an NVD, but you will need, you will need the ability to fix the problem as the problem is being found, just because I think that the number of things that are found is going to go up precipitously. You said 10x. That's just right now. I think we literally get exponential with this in the not too distant future.
We just kind of got into some of the business of remediation on Super Cyber Friday earlier today. So you want to check out that replay, hacking agentic access. I think a lot of the issues with trust in remediation for a lot of these, how do we give access safely with still some human scope in there? Fantastic conversation day. So make sure you check that out, CISOseries.com. Look for the info there as well to check out the replay of that. Next up here, Meta AI hands over Instagram account access. Attackers exploited Meta AI's support chatbot to take over high-profile Instagram accounts, such as the Obama White House, the Space Force's Chief Master Sergeant, and to the dismay of teenagers everywhere, Sephora. Attackers found that Meta used location as a verification factor for the chatbot, so they could just use a VPN to spoof a person's real-world location, then just ask the bot to change the email address for the account and did a password reset. Meta appears to have patched the flaw this week and has begun notifying impacted users if they haven't already. So, Rob, this is what I would qualify as bad. It seems like a classic security convenience spectrum issue here. Meta wanted the AI bot to be convenient for users. Oh, make this as easy as possible to remediate users. But given how easy it is to spoof locations, IP addresses aren't actual physical locations or can't be correlated always one-to-one there. How did this not raise a red flag for issues here? Like
that is a good question. And the question that I want to ask companies is, do we no longer have pessimists on steering committees? Are we not looking at this and someone's job is to say, what is the worst thing that can happen? I'm going to go work on that, because it seems like this isn't even the worst thing. It's just the bad thing that did happen that should have been caught, week 2 after the idea was brought up. So it's like, is that something we're no longer doing? I remember that there was a time when it was someone's literal job to just think the worst of everything. And they kind of got labeled. There's that guy, there's that gal that always has got something bad to say, but it needs to be someone's job to literally think about what is the worst case scenario. And that's what I'm going to go work on and see if we can't figure that out.
Actually, so Rob, this is the time that, hey, this is when you bring in Adam Shostak, right, and saying, hey, everybody, what's going to go wrong, right? And really his, threat modeling, capability. That needs to be the mindset of everybody, and it probably needs to be the mindset of all the agents that they're using for doing these reviews now.
Yeah, I mean that's the question. Like, you would think location as an authentication factor seems, unless that is tied to something that is hard to spoof, would not be my first choice. Let me just put that there. I'm firmly in the belief that, yes, Rob, we need those people, and we need the pessimists in the boardroom. We also need just bored teenagers sitting in every boardroom there and thinking about how everything could just mess around. Like, this is like something to mess around just to mess with somebody. Reminds me of like old school, like for the lulz hacking, kind of like, oh, we just asked it to do it and it turned out we could. I know there was VPNs and stuff involved. It's not quite as simple as that, but get your pessimists in the room, please. They're very valuable. Kevin Farrell says, "Deal, I'm in." Kevin will be your pessimist for hire. See our YouTube comments for his information here. All right, our last story here. It was Microsoft Build. It wasn't just Gartner this week. Microsoft Build. Lots of news coming out of there. We're going to cover just a few of them. First up was Microsoft's Majorana 2 quantum computing chip. They're saying it's offer up to 1,000-fold increase in certain performance metrics. Some interesting stuff. They're using lead in some of the superconducting wires there instead of aluminum. Like, interesting if you're into quantum stuff. But the big news for me was Microsoft now estimates production-capable quantum computers available sometime in some unspecified volume with unspecified capacity in 2029. Microsoft also announced its adaptive spec-driven scoring for evaluation and regression testing, mercifully shortened to ASSERT framework. Essentially, this is an open source framework for evaluating AI behavior, letting researchers use plain text, and then having a framework that's able to draw out structured behavior sets, problem scenarios, test cases. You run it against the models, you run it against changes, and you get a final score, which I think is interesting. And then also, they released agent control specifications, which let developers define policies for agents in a single file. The idea is to create a common governance layer where admins can state what an agent can and can't do, when to bring a human into the loop, and then like have it in a viewable, human readable document. Lots of big news here, David. I'm curious for you, which one caught your eye? Maybe are any of these a big deal? And which one if for the biggest?
Well, certainly quantum is a big deal, but I can't resist, being at Gartner this week as well, right? Talking about the guardian agents, right? And I think what Microsoft's doing here and what we're doing at Atlassian as well is really like governance as code, right? In a way, we're shifting left, everyone, not the DevSecOps, shifting left, but we're shifting left to the agents that are going to be driving our native SDLC processes, right? And this is the future. And I think that we heard it at Gartner. It was what we're doing here at Atlassian as well. And I think that's the future because that's the only way we can deal with all the vibe coders, in the world. And as high-tech companies, that we may have those pipelines and cultures, but name your favorite vertical: healthcare, manufacturing, retail. Are they going to have that culture and processes in place? Nope. They need these guardrails. They need these agents, for those vibe coders. Don't end up in a bad spot.
Rob, what about for you? What and on any of these big three, lots of big meaty stuff, or is there something else from Build that we totally missed out on here that could have some big security implications?
The agentic nature of just how everything is going is a huge story. I think it was reported today or yesterday that agents now account for more traffic on the internet than people. We weren't expected to get there until mid 2027. We're already there a year early. Now that's not, we're only there a year early. We've only been doing AI at this level for 3.5 years. So the fact that we are a year earlier of humans being overtaken by agents is a big deal. So this is stuff that I would imagine, Dave, folks like you that do what you do, this is what you are thinking about darn near on a daily basis.
Wow, Rob, I can't resist asking. So certainly one of my favorite podcasters, Brad Sams, right? He's got his little app, right? It says everything that's connecting from my Windows machine to the internet. Do we all need to know that to see what all our agents are doing on a daily basis now?
Yeah. All of us, do we need to know it? Probably not. Does somebody need to know it? Probably yes. Definitely if you're a CISO, at a big company with a lot of computers.
The thing that I at least enjoyed out of this, you can security researchers not afraid to throw some shade at Microsoft. A former Linux hippie here, so it's hard for me to praise them sometimes. I do like that Assert is open source. I know people can be skeptical that this is just Microsoft. They just want to make it easier, give you less reasons to not want to sign up for Copilot and 365 agents and all this kind of stuff, but the fact of again, if we get closer to standards on this, where we can kind of agree, okay, like we can have some common ground here. One, for evaluation, and two, just for kind of setting the rules of the road for these agents, so I don't have to cover any more stories of agent deleted our production database because reasons ? That to me feels like a win, and I'm glad it's not proprietary Microsoft thing as opposed to open source Microsoft thing. Microsoft also notably one of the biggest open source contributors, if not the biggest in the world. So some context there, not to throw any shade at Microsoft. Redmond, you're fine by me.
Well, just another thing, Microsoft is building stuff on Android. Now they've always, let's say Microsoft and Google have always had a decent relationship there, but to hear Microsoft is like, hey, we're going to do some stuff and we're going to actually use Android to do it because that's the most effective way that we found to do it. That is a very interesting conversation that's being had right now.
Rob, are you saying we're going to see the Dual 3 smartphone from Microsoft based on Android? Is that what I'm hearing here?
Yeah. I have wondered here over the last probably year or 18 months. Is Microsoft going to make another stab at a phone? I don't think they'll ever call it a phone, but is Microsoft going to have something that's small enough to fit in your pocket that does computer-like things, in the foreseeable future? And I used to say that the answer to that was absolutely no. I don't know that that's the answer any longer, because I think that you can shrink things down small enough to put them in your pocket or wear it as a brooch on your jacket. That there's things that Microsoft can do, and I think that they're investigating all of it right now.
Breaking news.
Beep to beep beep. I mean, as someone who has a Surface Go, which as a hardware platform is terrible, but I love the design of it. So the design of it is like my ideal tablet. I like when they do hardware. Sometimes I can't justify it, but Microsoft, go you crazy children. Before we get out of here, I have to ask for our audience here, based on our conversation today, a lot of big meaty issues here. I think we resolved all security issues also, by the way, by the end of the show. But Rob, I got to ask, do you have any piece of advice that you'd want to share with our audience, just kind of based on our discussion today?
Pay attention to agents. That is where the industry is moving on everything. It's like we hear AI, and it is agents are pieces of AI. But I think that what the agentic nature of what the internet is about to become, to where you just have software doing software things, it's not going to look like an application anymore. It's going to look like a conversation that you have for information that you want, and it'll just generate an interface to give it to you. We aren't there yet, but we might be in a year or two.
David, what about for you? What piece of advice would you leave for our audience?
Yeah, I'm going to build on what Rob says. We're saying whether you're a consumer and you're using OpenClaw, you need a guardian agent, right? And whether you're an organization, a business, and you've got a coding agents, you need a guardian agent, right? So I think everybody, that's what we need to start looking at. And I think we're all going to need it. Just like we all need endpoint protection, we also need guardian agents.
And I'm going to steal something I heard on Super Cyber Friday. They asked for some tips here. Start experimenting today. You don't have to go whole hog, certainly, especially, I mean, obviously in production, but start with one. See what the issues are with one and then move on. But again, kind of building off what you guys said, start becoming comfortable with what this is. Rob, I love that thought of it. Don't think of apps anymore. Think of conversations. That's probably closer to what we're going to see in the coming years before too long. Thank you so much, Rob Dunwood, host of Daily Tech News Show, and David Cross, the CISO for Atlassian. We will have links to both of your LinkedIn, and Rob will have a link to DTNS. David, I think people have heard of Atlassian, but we'll throw a link in there too, just in case they are not familiar. We're chums like that. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you back on. This was an absolutely phenomenal conversation. I cannot wait to have you back on again. Thanks also to our sponsor for today, Vanta, always helping make the show possible. Remember, if you have any feedback, I want to know, seriously, when we were talking about this world of AI vulnerabilities, does it actually get better? That's the question I want to leave you with. Where are we in 2 years? Is this a temporary lull where things seem like they're getting worse and hey, we're going to figure this out over time? Is it the vulnpocalypse? Feedback at CISOseries.com. That is what I want to know. Remember to join us next Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Department of No. And next Friday, we're also going to be talking about hacking the analyst firms on Super Cyber Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Just go to CISOseries.com to find the information on all of this good stuff, but a lot of fun. We're talking about Gartner. We're going to be talking about analysts next Friday too. It's going to be a ton of fun. Thank you so much for joining our Friday stand up here. Have a great week. Stay secure out there. And from all of us here, for myself, for our wonderful producer Josh, for the big boss man David Spark, for the rest of the CISO series crew, here's wishing you and yours to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.